The great council chamber hummed with nervous energy as representatives from 67 different species gathered around the massive circular table. Each delegate wore their finest ceremonial garments, though none could hide the defeat written across their faces. Well, almost none. Ambassador Vextar of the Zephyrian Empire adjusted his translucent wings and glanced nervously at the holographic documents floating before each seat. The terms were brutal, but fair considering their complete military collapse. The hegemony had crushed their combined fleets in less than 3 solar cycles and now demanded total surrender. The terms are quite reasonable, considering, wheezed Ambassador Grolk, his 3 eyes blinking in sequence. The amphibian diplomat from Aquanos had already signed his species' surrender an hour ago. Complete disarmament, resource tribute, and political autonomy under hegemony oversight could be worse. Yes, Vextar nodded grimly. His own people had fought valiantly, but their crystal-powered ships proved no match for hegemony technology. The surrender terms meant survival, even if it came with chains. Has everyone reviewed the documentation? Boomed the hegemony overseer, a towering mechanical being whose red optical sensors swept across the assembly. Compliance is mandatory. Refusal means complete annihilation of your homeworlds. One by one, species representatives pressed their appendages, claws, or tentacles against the biometric scanners. The Corvin hive mind signed for their billion-strong collective. The gas-dwelling Nebulons agreed to surrender their floating cities. Even the proud warrior clans of Brutus Prime accepted defeat. 66 species had signed, 1 remained. All attention turned to the human delegation's table, where Captain Maya Torres sat perfectly still, her arms crossed, staring at the surrender document with the kind of expression one might reserve for something particularly unpleasant stuck to their shoe. Captain Torres. The overseer's voice carried a hint of mechanical irritation. Your species' signature is required to complete the proceedings. Torres leaned back in her chair, a slight smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. Yeah, about that. She picked up the holographic document and held it at arm's length, squinting like she was trying to read fine print. I'm having a little trouble with some of the wording here. The chamber fell silent. Vextar felt his wing membranes flutter with anxiety. What was this human doing? The wording is standard across all surrender documents, the overseer stated coldly. Perhaps your translator is malfunctioning? Oh no, my translator works just fine. Torres set the document down and looked around the room with mock confusion. I understand every word perfectly. That's actually the problem. She stood up slowly, her boots clicking against the polished floor. See, there's this one little word that keeps jumping out at me. Maybe you folks can help me with it. Ambassador Grolk's throat sac inflated nervously. Captain Torres, please. We must proceed. The hegemony grows impatient. Torres nodded thoughtfully. Right, of course they do. But this word, she tapped the holographic display. Surrender. surrender. Funny thing about humans and that particular word. We seem to have developed this weird allergy to it over the centuries. The overseer's optical array focused on her with laser precision. Explain. Well, it's like this. Torres began pacing around her chair, hands clasped behind her back like she was giving a lecture. Throughout human history, whenever someone bigger and stronger has shown up and demanded we surrender, we've had this really annoying tendency to say. She paused dramatically. No. Nervous chatter erupted around the chamber. Species representatives whispered frantically among themselves. Vextar couldn't believe what he was hearing. Was this human completely insane? Captain Torres, Ambassador Yinth of the Stellar Confederacy spoke up, her crystalline voice trembling. Your fleet was destroyed along with the rest of ours. Earth's defenses have fallen. Your military is shattered. What possible advantage do you think you possess? Torres stopped pacing and grinned. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Advantage. Who said anything about having an advantage? She gestured broadly at the assembled delegates. Look around, folks. We're all here because we got our collective backsides handed to us on a silver platter. No arguments there. Then why refuse to sign? demanded the overseer. Because, Torres said, her voice dropping to a conversational tone that somehow seemed more menacing than shouting, that humans have this really inconvenient habit of being absolutely terrible at knowing when we're beaten. She walked over to the massive viewing portal that showed the hegemony fleet in orbit above the council station. Thousands of dark, angular vessels hung in perfect formation like a swarm of mechanical locusts. See, other species, bless their logical hearts, they can do math. Torres pointed at the fleet. They can look at overwhelming odds, calculate survival probabilities, and make rational decisions about surrender. She turned back to face the room. Humans were really bad at math, especially when it comes to odds. Ambassador Grix of the Earthen Collective slammed his fist on the table. This is madness. Your homeworld will be reduced to ashes. Maybe, Torres agreed cheerfully. Probably even. But here's the thing about humans that you folks seem to keep forgetting. Her expression hardened. We're spiteful. Like astronomically spiteful. The kind of spiteful that makes us perfectly willing to burn everything down just to make sure the other guy doesn't get to enjoy it. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. Vextar felt his wings fold tight against his body involuntarily. You think the hegemony cares about your spite? The overseer asked. They will simply eliminate your species and move on. Torres laughed, and the sound sent chills through the assembled delegates. Oh, they'll try. And they might even succeed. But here's what's going to happen first. She began counting on her fingers. First, every human ship, station, and outpost is going to fight until there's nothing left but scrap metal and radiation. Not because we think we can win, but because we're too stubborn to quit. That's suicide, whispered Ambassador Keln of the Drift Nomads. Second, Torres continued, ignoring the interruption, we're going to make them pay for every single inch of space with their own blood. And third, her smile turned positively predatory. We're going to teach them something about humans that they clearly haven't learned yet. Which is? The overseer demanded. Torres walked back to her chair and sat down, leaning forward with her elbows on the table. We're the species that looks at a galaxy full of bigger, stronger, more advanced civilizations and says, nice place you got here. Mind if we live here too? And then, when those civilizations say no, we move in anyway and redecorate. The silence stretched for long moments before Ambassador Vextar found his voice. Captain Torres, please reconsider. The hegemony's offer allows your species to survive under their protection. Torres tilted her head like she was considering this. Protection, huh? From what? From annihilation. Grolt croaked. Torres nodded sagely. And who exactly is threatening to annihilate us if we don't accept this generous protection? The question hung in the air like a toxic gas cloud. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The hegemony. Vextar said quietly. Right. So let me see if I understand this correctly. Torres stood up again, this time moving toward the overseer's position. The hegemony is offering to protect us from the hegemony, in exchange for complete submission to the hegemony. That sound about right? The overseer's optical array tracked her movement. Your analysis is simplistic but essentially accurate. Simplistic, Torres repeated. Right. Well, here's some more simplistic analysis for you. She stopped directly in front of the mechanical being, craning her neck to look up at its towering form. Humans have a saying, the only good deal with the devil is no deal at all. The hegemony is not a mythological entity, the overseer stated. Torres shrugged. Maybe not. But you're close enough for government work. She walked back toward her seat but didn't sit down. Instead, she picked up the surrender document one more time. You know what this really is? She held up the holographic display. This isn't a surrender document. It's a bill of sale. You're asking us to sell our freedom, our dignity, and our future for the privilege of staying alive as your servants. Better than extinction. Ambassador Yinth protested. Is it though? Torres looked around the room, making eye contact with as many delegates as possible. Is existence without freedom really better than fighting for something worth believing in? Spoken like someone who has never faced true extinction. Grolk wheezed. Your idealism will fade quickly when hegemony bombardment fleets arrive at Earth. Torres considered this for a moment, then nodded. You might be right. Maybe when I'm watching Earth burn, I'll wish I'd signed this paper. She paused. But I won't be around to regret it, will I? Because I'll be too busy trying to ram my ship down their throats. The overseer stepped forward, its massive frame casting a shadow over the human captain. Your refusal dooms not only your species, but potentially these proceedings. The hegemony requires unanimous compliance. Oh dear, Torres said, not sounding sorry at all. How terrible for you. Ambassador Vextar felt his breath catch. What do you mean? Torres gestured toward the other delegates. Well, see, that's the really inconvenient thing about human stubbornness. It tends to be contagious. She looked directly at Vextar. Tell me, Ambassador, when you signed your surrender document, did you feel proud? Did you feel like you were doing the right thing for your people? Vextar's wings twitched involuntarily. We had no choice. There's always a choice, Torres said gently. The question is whether you can live with the consequences. She turned to address the entire assembly. Look, I get it. I really do. You're all thinking about survival, about protecting your species, about living to see another day. Those are good thoughts. Rational thoughts. She paused, letting her words sink in. But here's what I'm thinking about. Her voice grew harder. I'm thinking about what my great-grandmother would say if she could see me signing a document that turns humanity into a slave species. She fought in something we called World War II, back when we were still confined to one planet. The enemy offered her people a choice: surrender and live under occupation, or fight and probably die. Torres walked over to the viewing portal again, staring out at the hegemony fleet. She chose to fight. And you know what? She won. Not because she was stronger, or smarter, or had better weapons. She won because she refused to quit, even when quitting would have been the smart thing to do. Ambassador Keln shifted nervously. But Captain, the scale of this conflict dwarfs any planetary war. The hegemony commands resources beyond imagination. Sure they do, Torres agreed. They've got bigger ships, better weapons, more troops. Based by every rational measure, they should win easily. She turned back to face the room. Good thing for us that humans aren't rational. The overseer's optical array flared brighter. Your emotional appeals will not alter the mathematical reality of this situation. Compliance is inevitable. Torres laughed again, but this time it sounded different, warmer somehow. You know what? You're absolutely right. Voting, compliance probably is inevitable, but you're missing something important, which is the difference between inevitable and immediate. Torres pulled out what looked like a small communication device. You see, while we've all been sitting here having this lovely philosophical discussion, I've been sending updates to my people back on Earth. A cold dread settled over the chamber. Vextar felt his blood freeze in his veins. What kind of updates? The overseer demanded. Torres smiled. Oh, just keeping them informed about the surrender terms, the unanimous compliance requirement, that sort of thing. She glanced at her device. Actually, I should be getting a response right about now. The device chimed softly. Torres looked at the message and nodded with satisfaction. What does it say? Ambassador Grolk asked fearfully. Torres looked up at the assembled delegates with an expression of innocent confusion. Funny thing. Apparently, every human colony, outpost, and fleet commander in known space has suddenly developed the same mysterious condition I have. What condition? It's an acute allergic reaction to the word surrender. Torres pocketed the device. Seems to be spreading faster than a computer virus. Who would have thought? Medef. The overseer towered over her menacingly. You have sabotaged these proceedings. Me? I haven't done anything except exercise my right to refuse to sign a document. Torres shrugged. If that somehow interferes with your plans, well, that sounds like a you problem. The mechanical being's optical array blazed with hostile light. Your defiance will be noted and punished accordingly. I'm sure it will be, Torres agreed. But here's the thing about punishment. For it to be effective, the person being punished has to care about the consequences. She spread her arms wide. And frankly, I'm having trouble caring about much of anything beyond making sure you folks understand one simple fact, which is, Ace, Torres's expression became deadly serious. Humans don't surrender. We might lose, we might die. We might get blown to atoms, but we don't surrender. And now, thanks to this little gathering, every species in this room knows that about us. She began walking toward the exit, but paused at the doorway. Oh, and one more thing. Torres looked back at the assembled delegates. For those of you wondering what happens next, I'll give you a hint. When the hegemony comes to collect on those surrender agreements you all signed, you might want to ask yourselves a question. What question? Vextar heard himself ask. Torres's smile was absolutely terrifying. If the humans are willing to fight a hopeless war rather than surrender, what exactly are they planning to do to make sure everyone else gets a second chance to make a better choice? And with that, Captain Maya Torres walked out of the chamber, leaving behind 66 very nervous alien delegates, one extremely frustrated hegemony overseer, and the growing realization that the galaxy was about to become a much more dangerous place. The Great Council chamber remained silent for a full minute after the human captain's departure. Then, slowly, Ambassador Vextar reached for his surrender document and quietly deleted his signature. Ambassador Grolk's throat sac deflated with a soft wheeze. Well, he croaked. This should be interesting. 2 weeks later, Vextar found himself aboard a stolen hegemony transport ship, watching Captain Torres pilot them through an asteroid field with the kind of reckless abandon that would make a suicidal pilot seem cautious by comparison. Could you perhaps avoid that massive rock formation directly ahead? Vextar suggested, his wing membranes fluttering with panic as Torres yanked the controls hard to starboard. Where's the fun in that? Torres replied, threading the ship between two asteroids with maybe 3 meters of clearance on either side. Besides, this is what humans call a strategic retreat. It looks suspiciously like running away, wheezed Grolk from the passenger compartment, his 3 eyes spinning independently from motion sickness. Running away implies we're scared, Torres corrected. This is more like tactical repositioning with extreme prejudice. The past 2 weeks had been absolutely insane, even by galactic standards. Within hours of the failed surrender ceremony, every species that had signed the documents began receiving the same message from their respective governments. Signature rescinded. Prepare for war. It turned out that Torres hadn't been lying about human stubbornness being contagious. Her little speech had been broadcast live across 67 different species communication networks, and the reaction had been swift and decisive. The Corvan hive mind declared their surrender null and void due to temporary insanity. The Nebulons announced they were reconsidering their life choices. Even the warrior clans of Brutus Prime issued a statement saying they'd rather die with honor than live as slaves. The hegemony's response had been predictably violent. Incoming missile barrage, announced Elena Santos, Torres's second-in-command. From the weapons station, 12 pursuit craft closing fast. Excellent, Torres said with the kind of enthusiasm normal people reserved for birthday parties. Time to show our new friends here how humans say goodbye. She spun the ship in a complete barrel roll, using the asteroid field's gravitational anomalies to slingshot them toward their pursuers. Vextar watched in horrified fascination as the human captain accelerated directly into the enemy formation. Captain Torres, he managed to squeak. Are you attempting to ram them? Ram them? Oh no, Ambassador. Torres's grin was positively feral. Ramming would be wasteful. Santos, activate the surprise. With pleasure, Captain. The transport ship's cargo bay doors opened, releasing what appeared to be several hundred small metallic spheres into space. The hegemony pursuit craft flew straight into the expanding cloud of objects. What are those? Asked Ambassador Yinth, who had somehow ended up on the ship after her own government decided surrender was temporarily unfashionable. And mining charges, Torres explained as the first explosions lit up space behind them. Turns out humans are really good at repurposing industrial equipment for creative applications. The hegemony ships that weren't immediately vaporized by the improvised minefield found themselves dealing with electromagnetic pulse bursts that fried their navigation systems. 3 crashed into asteroids, 2 collided with each other, and the last one limped away trailing atmosphere from multiple hull breaches. 12-0, Santos reported. Not bad for mining equipment. Humans are terrifying. Vextar muttered. We prefer resourceful, Torres corrected. Now, let's go check on our little project. She piloted them toward a massive asteroid that had been hollowed out and converted into something that definitely hadn't been in any military textbook Vextar had ever read. The structure bristled with communications arrays, weapon emplacements, and what looked like launch bays for small craft. Welcome to Firebase Alpha, Torres announced proudly, home base for the Galactic Liberation Coalition. As they docked, Vextar noticed ships from dozens of different species coming and going from the hidden base. Zephyrian fighters flew alongside Corvan bio ships. Earthen-heavy cruisers shared landing bays with nimble drift nomad scouts. How did you organize all this so quickly? He asked. Torres shrugged. Turns out most species don't actually enjoy being enslaved. Who knew? She led them through the docking bay toward what appeared to be a command center. Also, humans have this annoying tendency to make friends with everyone we meet. The command center was a hive of activity. Representatives from every species that had originally signed surrender documents worked alongside human tactical officers, sharing intelligence and coordinating strikes against hegemony positions. At the center of it all stood a human woman Vextar didn't recognize, wearing the insignia of a fleet admiral. She looked up as Torres approached. Maya. Good to see you made it back in one piece, the admiral said. How did our guests enjoy their first taste of human-style warfare? I think Ambassador Vextar is beginning to understand why we don't surrender, Torres replied. Admiral Sarah Kim. Meet the representatives who decided that maybe signing away their freedom wasn't such a great idea after all. Admiral Kim nodded to the assembled aliens. Gentlemen, ladies, and non-binary entities, welcome to the revolution. I hope you're ready for the ride of your lives. What exactly is the plan here? Ambassador Grolk croaked. The hegemony still has overwhelming numerical superiority. True, Kim agreed. They have more ships, more weapons, more troops. By every conventional measure, they should crush us easily. She gestured to a holographic display showing hegemony fleet positions throughout the galaxy. Good thing we're not fighting a conventional war. Nandy. The display zoomed in on a heavily fortified hegemony stronghold. As they watched, the base's outer defenses suddenly went dark. Internal explosions began lighting up the structure from within. What's happening there? Vextar asked. Humans have this wonderful concept called guerrilla warfare, Kim explained. Instead of meeting the enemy in pitched battles where they have the advantage, we hit them where they're weak, when they don't expect it, with weapons they didn't know we had. The holographic display showed more hegemony positions under attack, supply convoys ambushed by mixed-species strike teams, communication relays sabotaged by infiltrators, command ships boarding by supposedly surrendered prisoners who turned out to be very much not surrendered. The beauty of it, Torres added, is that every species brings something different to the table. Zephyrian stealth technology, Corvan hive mind coordination, Earthen engineering expertise, Nebulons who can operate in environments that would kill everyone else. And humans bring the complete inability to recognize when they're beaten. Kim finished. It's a winning combination. An alarm chimed softly, and a tactical officer called out, Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth. Kim nodded. Put it through. A holographic figure materialized in the center of the command center. The man appeared to be in his 70s, wearing a military uniform that had seen better days. Behind him, explosions lit up what was clearly a battle-scarred landscape. Admiral Kim, this is General Marcus Stone, commanding what's left of Earth's ground forces. His voice was calm despite the apparent combat raging around him. I have a status report you're going to want to hear. Go ahead, General. Stone's weathered face split into a grin that would have made Torres proud. The hegemony just made a tactical error. They decided to make an example of Earth by landing occupation forces instead of just bombing us from orbit. And Kim prompted, and now they're discovering why humans have never been successfully occupied by anyone, ever. Behind Stone, a massive explosion sent debris flying past the camera. Turns out fighting humans on their own home turf is about as smart as sticking your head in a nest of angry hornets. The transmission showed brief glimpses of the ongoing battle. Human resistance fighters emerging from underground tunnels to ambush hegemony patrols. Civilian populations that had supposedly been pacified launching coordinated uprisings. Military units that had officially surrendered reappearing with captured enemy equipment. "What's your casualty assessment?" Kim asked. Stone's grin widened. "For us? About what you'd expect. For them?" He gestured to something off camera. "Well, let's just say the hegemony is learning that occupying Earth is like trying to swallow a live grenade. Technically possible, but the consequences are spectacular." Vextar watched in amazement as the display showed more scenes of the ongoing resistance, humans fighting with captured hegemony weapons, improvised explosives, and what appeared to be sheer bloody-minded determination. "General," Torres spoke up, "how long can you hold out?" "Hold out?" Stone laughed. "Captain, we're not holding out. We're advancing. The enemy controls maybe 30% of the major population centers, and they're losing ground every hour." His expression became serious. The hegemony thought they were dealing with a broken species begging for mercy. Instead, they stuck their hand into a blender full of apex predators. The holographic display updated to show hegemony forces throughout the galaxy. What had been steady green markers indicating secure positions were rapidly changing to yellow and red as bases came under attack, supply lines were severed, and garrison forces found themselves fighting for their lives. "It's working," Ambassador Yenth whispered. "The strategy is actually working." "Of course it's working," Kim said matter-of-factly. "The hegemony's entire approach is based on forcing species to surrender through overwhelming force. But what happens when your enemy refuses to stay surrendered?" She manipulated the holographic display to show forced deployment patterns. They spread their fleets thin, trying to occupy every world that signed surrender documents. Then those worlds started fighting back. Now they're trying to garrison 67 different species worth of territory with an army designed for conquest, not occupation. Torres nodded approvingly. "And while they're busy trying to hold on to what they think they've already won, we're free to hit them wherever they're weakest." A communications officer interrupted. "Admiral, incoming transmission from the hegemony overseer, audio only." Kim nodded. "Let's hear what they have to say." The same mechanical voice that had demanded surrender 2 weeks ago filled the command center, though it now carried a distinct note of frustration. "Admiral Kim, this is Hegemony Overseer Unit Prime. Your continued resistance is futile and costly. We are prepared to negotiate terms for a cessation of hostilities." Kim looked around at the assembled species representatives, then responded with the kind of diplomatic courtesy that could cut glass. "Overseer Prime, this is Admiral Kim. I'm afraid there seems to be some confusion on your part. Explain. You seem to be under the impression that we want to negotiate with you." Kim's voice carried the same pleasant tone one might use to explain something obvious to a particularly slow child. "That's incorrect. What we want is for you to leave our space and never come back. Your demands are unreasonable. The hegemony requires resource tribute and political compliance from all species within this sector." Torres stepped forward. "Yeah, about that. See, there's this human concept you might want to familiarize yourself with. It's called go pound sand." "And I do not understand that reference." "It means," Kim explained helpfully, "that you can take your demands and do something anatomically creative with them." The silence stretched for several seconds before the overseer responded. "Your species' crude humor will not alter the mathematical reality of this conflict. The hegemony possesses superior resources." "Maybe," Kim agreed. "But you're missing something important about mathematics, which is, numbers are only useful if you can apply them effectively." She gestured to the tactical display. "Right now, your superior fleet is scattered across 67 different systems, fighting 67 different insurgencies, while trying to occupy populations that have suddenly remembered they don't actually want to be occupied. Torres picked up the thread. Meanwhile, our inferior forces are concentrated, mobile, and highly motivated. Plus, we have something your mathematics probably didn't account for. What? We're really good at making friends. Torres indicated the mixed species command staff around them. Turns out when you give different species a common enemy and a shared goal, they tend to work together remarkably well. General Stone's voice crackled over the communication link from Earth. Overseer, this is General Stone. I've got a mathematical equation for you. 1 human plus righteous anger equals your garrison forces having a very bad day. Multiply that by several billion humans and carry the 1. Your resistance cannot be sustained indefinitely, the Overseer insisted. Hegemony reinforcements are en route. Great, Kim replied cheerfully. More targets. We were starting to run low. The transmission cut abruptly. In the resulting silence, Vextar found himself staring at the humans around him with a mixture of admiration and terror. You're all completely insane, he said finally. Probably, Torres agreed. But we're winning. Admiral Kim pulled up a galaxy-wide strategic overview. Hegemony positions continued to flicker from secure to contested to overrun as the rebellion spread. Gentlemen, ladies, and distinguished entities, she announced to the command center, I believe it's time to end this war. What do you have in mind? Asked Ambassador Grolk. Kim's smile was every bit as terrifying as Torres's had been 2 weeks earlier. Simple. We're going to give the hegemony the same choice they gave us. She manipulated the display to show the hegemony's primary fleet concentration, gathered around what appeared to be their main command hub. We're going to surround their entire leadership structure with every ship we can muster, and then we're going to make them an offer they can't refuse. Torres laughed. Are we really going to demand their surrender? Oh yes, Kim nodded. And when they refuse, because of course they will, we're going to show them what happens when someone tries to enslave the galaxy's most stubborn species. General Stone's voice added from the communication link. Vextar felt his wings flutter with nervous anticipation. And if they accept surrender? Kim and Torres exchanged looks. Then we're going to have to figure out what to do with a hegemony that's learned not to mess with humans, Kim said thoughtfully. That's easy, Torres replied. We'll teach them how to be good neighbors instead of galactic bullies. And if they don't want to learn, Torres's grin was absolutely predatory, then we'll teach them why human beings are the galaxy's apex diplomats. How exactly are humans apex diplomats? Vextar asked. Simple, Torres explained. We're the only species that conducts diplomacy with the other party's complete and undivided attention. I don't understand. It's hard to ignore someone who's pointing a gun at your head while offering to shake your hand, Kim clarified. As if to emphasize the point, the tactical display updated to show human-led coalition fleets moving into position around hegemony space. What had started as a desperate last stand was rapidly becoming a coordinated offensive involving every species that had originally agreed to surrender. The revolution was complete. The hegemony, who had demanded total submission from 67 different species, now found themselves surrounded by those same species, all of whom had learned a valuable lesson about the difference between losing a battle and losing a war. And at the center of it all, Captain Maya Torres stood with her arms crossed, wearing the same expression she'd had when she refused to sign that surrender document 2 weeks ago. Some things, it seemed, never changed, especially human stubbornness.